Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to study a poem written by Robert Browning. The main theme of the poem is the reaction of the people towards a patriot just 1 year ago and the reaction of the people towards that patriot up to 1 year. In this poem there are two basic differences. On the one hand, the reaction of the people just 1 year ago, and on the other hand, the reaction of the people towards the patriot or the speaker of the poem. Let's first discuss about the main theme or the summary of the poem. The speaker told us about the welcome that he had received 1 year ago when he entered into his town. People were gathered, they were overcrowding, all the buildings were overcrowded. There are large amount of crowd they wanted to see the speaker of the patriot. As he was a patriot, he fight for the country and the people came there to see their hero. And the roads and the paths were filled with the roses and the myrtle. All the churches, towers and buildings, roofs of the top of the buildings, towers were overcrowded. All the bells were ringing just to welcome the patriot. They wanted to give the patriot, the speaker, everything. They even wanted to give the son as a gift to the patriot if the patriot wants so. That was the welcome situation 1 year back. And then on the other hand, just the speaker tells about the present situation or the after 1 year from our grand welcome, after 1 year later, the present situation, the reaction of the people. Now the speaker was marching towards the Shamble Gate. Shamble Gate is a place where people are gathered to see the hanging people. And the scaffold is the place where the people of the criminals or the animals were hanged. So the poet who was marching was taken away towards the Shamble Gate and people were gathered, but the number of or the amount of people were very less compared to the 1 year back. Now there was no roses, no myrtle flowers. There are only stones. People are throwing stones to the patriot or the speakers. His forehead was bleeding and his hands were tied with the rope and it was almost bleeding. So that was the reaction of the people. It was the same people that welcomed him 1 year back with the roses and the myrtle flowers, but in the later after 1 year at the current time, the reaction of the people were completely changed, completely different. It was maybe for his 1 year misdeed that people hated him and they even thrown the stones towards him and he was taken away to the Shamble Gate as he was punished, as he was going to hang. There are the two differences, but at the ending we'll see that, as we know, Robert Browning, the poet of the poem, is very optimistic kind of poet. So the speaker is also very optimistic and he said that he will not regret after death. He will after the death and he will enter into a new life that is after the death. And God will decide what will do, what will wrong or what will right for him. And he will be much more safer in the hands of the God than the hands of these people who are now throwing stones towards him. This is the main theme or the summary of the poem. Let's study the text of the poem, The Patriot, written by Robert Browning. It was roses, roses all the way, with myrtle mixed in my path like mad. That means when the patriot, the speaker, entered into his town, all the roads were filled with the roses and the myrtle. Myrtle means is a type of small tree that has sweet smelling white or pink flowers and blackberries. So the myrtle and the roses of the flowers that were thrown at his feet to welcome him. The house roofs seemed to be heaved and so sway. That means all the buildings, all the roofs were packed up by the people. They just wanted to see the hero. The church spires flamed, such flags they had. All the top buildings of the top of the church's buildings were full of flags. They were welcoming their hero. A year ago on this very day, that was the situation and the welcome that the speaker get 1 year ago. Number 2 stanza. The air broke into mist with bells. That means all around the atmosphere. That means this air broke into mist with bells. That means all around the air there was a ringing sound of the bell. The bell was ringing loudly, and the bell was ringing completely to welcome their hero. They welcome the patriot, the speaker. The old walls rocked with the crowd and cries. Old walls of the roads of the buildings were shaken because of the people, because of the crowd, because the large amount of the crowd, they gathered, and then they were welcoming, they were shouting, they were singing just to welcome their hero. Had I said, good folk, merry noise repels, but give me your son from yonder skies. And the poet also said, after seeing the reaction of the people of his own country, if I had told them that give me the son as a gift, they would probably not deny. And they had answered, and afterward what else? And also they would also say, afterward what else? That means they would give the son to the poet, but that is very small thing for them. If the poet wanted more than that anything, they would also give them that things. That is the feelings, that is the love towards the patriot, the speaker from the people. Number 3 stanza. Alack, it was I who leaped at the sun to give it my loving friends to keep. Alack means to show regret. Alack means to regret. In 3rd stanza, we will find that the poet feels regret or sorrow, feels sorry. Alack, it was I who leaped at the sun to give it my loving friends to keep. The poet regret by saying that it was the who himself who leaped the sun, who leaped at the sun. That means he wanted to get the sun and would give it to his loving friends to keep. Here it was I who leaped at the sun. Here this line refers to a mythological character, Icarus, son of Daedalus. The Icarus dared to fly even near to the sun, to claim the sun, but as a result, his waxy wings were melted and he was subjected to death into the sea. So the poet said that it is who himself who dares to claim the sun, to keep the sun to their friends, to his loving friends. Not man could do have I left undone. That means this is the hardest thing, to claim the sun, to take the sun for his loving friends. But he had done this just to keep his friends and all his countrymen happy. And you see my harvest, what I reap this very day, now a year is run. But now the poet is regretted that now all you see the result. What I have done to you, I had done with my all best efforts to keep my friends and countrymen happy. But now what I return, what I get in return. He was feeling regretful. What I reap this very day, now a year is run. That means, but the 1 year is run. What I had harvested, that means 1 year ago, what the poet had harvested for his fellow countrymen, for his loving friend, even he wanted to get the sun, even he get the sun and keep the sun to his friend for the sake of their own countrymen, for the sake of their loving friends. But 1 year after the present time, what he get in return? He get just hatred from his fellow men. That shows his regretful, that shows his sadness, that shows his regretful attitude towards his fellow and countrymen. Number 4 stanza. There is nobody on the housetops now, just a passage few at the window seat. Number 4 stanza comes to the present situation of the poet. Now there was nobody on the top of the buildings, of the roof of the buildings. There was nobody who can welcome the patriot. Now there was nobody to welcome the patriot or to welcome the speakers. Just there are few passive people, passives who was patient and are unable to move anywhere. They were resting in their beds in their houses. They were only the few people who were looking to the speakers. And beside them, there was not much of crowd which he saw 1 year back. For the best of the sights is all allowed. Okay. Maybe there are some people who gathered at the Shambles Gate to be the witness of the hanging of the poet. And there are some people who are waiting, who are looking at the speakers from their windows, who are palsied. That means who are old and became patient, who were unable to move anywhere. They were sitting near the windows and looking towards the patriot. These are the some few people who were gathered. Otherwise, there was no people, no crowd to welcome the patriot, which he witnessed 1 year earlier back. At the Shambles Gate, or better yet, by the very scaffold's foot, I trow. Trow means believe. Scaffold means structure on which criminals are hanged. Shambles the hanging place. Trow means believe. That means poets say that there are no much people. There are some people who are gathered near the Shambles Gate to see the hanging of the poet. The poet was going to hang in the scaffold. Otherwise, there is no much crowd. Let's come to the number 5 stanza. I go in the rain and more than needs. A rope cuts both my wrists behind, and I think by the field my forehead bleeds. This stanza describes about the present situation of the speaker. Now there was a rain. He was taken away during the rain, and a rope cuts both my wrists behind. His wrists were tight, and because of the rope his hands were also cut and was bleeding. I think by the feel my forehead bleeds, and his forehead also bleeding because people throwing stones at him. For the pleading, whoever has the mind, stones at me for my years misdeeds. That means his forehead was bleeding because people who were wanted threw stones at him. Because of the stones, his forehead bleeds. And it is maybe for his 1 year's misdeed. That was the belief of the speaker. Number 6 stanza or last stanza. Thus I entered and thus I go. That poet said, thus I entered where? They entered into the death or scaffold gate. Thus I go. Where the speaker does go? The speaker goes into the life after death. This is next wall after the death. In triumphs, people have dropped down death. That means in the triumph victory, people maybe died, people dead, paid by the world. What dost thou owe me? God might question now instead. This God shall repay, I am safer so. But the poet was regretted and he was feel very sad. But at the same time, he was very optimistic. As the poet Robert Browning himself was very optimistic, the speaker is also very optimistic, and he said that after entering the new life, after the death, he will be going to a new world where he will surrender himself to the hand of the God, and God will decide what is wrong and what is right for him, and what he did not accept or did not reward, what he did not get as a reward for his deeds for his countrymen, God will definitely judge it. And he also feel very safe in the hand of the God, better than in the hand of the people that was throwing stones towards him. This is the poem. This is the text of the poem Patriot. Let's discuss about some some figure of speech. Let's discuss about some figure of speech of the poem. Number one figure of speech we have number one, alliteration. Alliteration means the same word repeated or the letter of a words are repeated. Number one sentence, with martyr mixed in my path like mad. Here there are three words, mad, martyr and mixed. The first letter of the mixed, M. The first letter of M of these three words. That means the M is repeated, M letter is repeated 3 times in 3 words. That's why it is an example of alliteration. Number 2. In triumphs, people have dropped down dead. Here, the dropped word and dropped down did. These are 3 words, and D and D. Here the letter D is repeated in the 3 words. This is also an example of alliteration. Then comes to the next figure of speech, that is personification. Personification means the quality or things which actually related to the human beings, but when these qualities of human beings are represented or related to a natural objects or in abstract ideas, that is called personification. Number 1 example, the house roofs seem to heap and sway. Here the house roofs seem to be heap and sway. Here the heaps and sway, these are the 2 qualities that belong to the human beings, not to the house roofs. But here these 2 qualities of human beings are related to the nature and object. So this is an example of personification. Number 2. Then comes to the hyperbole. Hyperbole means when something is used to exaggerate or when something is exaggerated. Hyperbole means when something is exaggerated to giving more importance. That is the example of hyperbole. Number 1. And afterward, what else? This line said when the poet said that after seeing the reaction 1 years back, even had he said to the people, even had he wanted from the people the sun, the people would say that they would definitely give the sun to their hero, and they would also tell him or tell the speaker what else he wanted. That shows that they will wanted to give anything the speaker wants. So this shows the more exaggeration. So this is the example of hyperbole. Then metaphor. What is the metaphor? Metaphor means an implied comparison is made between 2 elements or 2 objects. That means not a direct comparison is made. There is a comparison is made between 2 things, but the comparison is implied. We have to think deeply to understand the actual differences applied or to understand the actual 2 things which are compared together. And you see my harvest what I reap. What I reap, that means here it symbolizes the deeds of the speaker, which are compared as the reap, and the harvest. And the harvest means the result or the consequences of the speaker. So the harvest and the reap are the 2 elements which are compared impliedly, which actually shows the deeds, and harvest shows the consequences. So this is the complete explanation, summary, text, and some important figure of speech and some important notes of the poem Patriot by Robert Browning. So keep studying, keep learning, take care.